That village girl has more kindness and humility in her little finger than you've ever shown in our marriage. The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. Onyechi stared at her husband, realizing that he had crossed a line that they would never come back from. Onyechi was everything Agu had ever wanted in a woman. She was stunningly beautiful, with a fair skin that glowed like the morning sun, and a figure that made heads turn wherever she went. She was the epitome of sophistication, always dressed in the latest fashion and carried herself with the grace of a queen. But there was one thing about Onyechi that Agu overlooked in his infatuation. She was not one for domestic duties. She had made it clear before their marriage that she did not cook, clean, or engage in any housework. Agu, who was blinded by love and enamored by her beauty, had accepted this without hesitation. For the first few months of their marriage, everything seemed perfect. Onyechi spent her days shopping, attending social events, and basking in the admiration of those around her. Agu, on the other hand, was busy with his business, often coming home to a quiet house with no signs of a meal or any household chores done. At first, he didn't mind. After all, he had known what he was getting into. But as time went on, the strain of maintaining a household without any help began to weigh on him. One evening, as they sat together in their lavish living room, Agu finally voiced his concerns. "Onyechi," he began cautiously, "I've been thinking, maybe we should hire a housemaid to help around the house." Onyechi looked up from her magazine, her perfectly manicured nails tapping on the glossy pages. "A housemaid? Why would we need one? You're here and you're helping out just fine." Agu sighed, trying to choose his words carefully. "It's just that, with both of us being so busy, it would be nice to have someone to care for cooking and cleaning. It will make things easier for me, especially because I can't come back from work and go ahead and start cleaning and cooking." Onyechi shrugged, seemingly indifferent. "Well, if you think it's necessary, go ahead. But don't expect me to manage her. That's your job." Agu nodded, relieved that she didn't object. The next day, he made a few inquiries and soon found a young woman named Neka. She came highly recommended by a friend. She was 23 years old, a simple village girl with no formal education, but with a reputation for being hardworking and diligent. When Nneka arrived at their home, she was awestruck by the size and grandeur of the house. She had never seen such luxury in her life. She was determined to do her very best and make a good impression on her new employers. Neka quickly proved her worth in the household. She was up at the crack of dawn every day, cleaning the entire house before Nyechi even stirred from her bed. The floors sparkled, the laundry was always done, and the house was filled with the aroma of delicious meals that Nneka prepared with the skills she had learned from her village. The first time Onyechi and Agu tasted Nneka's cooking, they were pleasantly surprised. As the days turned into weeks, Nneka's presence became a welcome one in the household. Onyechi, who initially paid little attention to her, began to appreciate the cleanliness and order that Nneka brought to the home. Agu, on the other hand, found himself spending more time at home, enjoying the meals and the comfort that Nneka provided. It wasn't long before Agu began to notice Nneka in a different light. She was not just a good cook and a diligent cleaner. She was also kind-hearted, humble, and always eager to please. There was something about her simplicity and sincerity that drew him in. Unlike Onyechi, who was often preoccupied with her own affairs, Nneka was always attentive to his needs, making sure he was comfortable and well taken care of. One afternoon, while Onyechi was out shopping, Agu found Nneka in the kitchen, struggling to read the instructions on a new kitchen appliance. "Nneka, do you need help with that?" Agu asked, stepping into the kitchen. Nneka looked up, her face flushing with embarrassment. "Yes, sir. I can't read very well." Agu smiled kindly. "That's all right. I can teach you if you want." And from that day on, Agu began to teach Nneka how to read and write whenever Onyechi was not around. It started with simple words and sentences, but soon enough, Nneka was able to read short passages from books that Agu had bought for her. He also began buying her small gifts, nothing extravagant, just tokens of appreciation for her hard work. As they spent more time together, Agu realized that he was developing feelings for her. She was everything Onyechi wasn't: caring, hardworking, and respectful. He found himself drawn to her in a way he hadn't felt in years. As the bond between Agu and Nneka grew stronger, the dynamics in the household began to change. Onyechi, who had always been the center of attention, started to feel a shift in Agu's behavior. He was no longer as attentive to her needs as he once was, and she couldn't help but notice the small gestures of affection he showed towards Nneka. One evening, Onyechi returned home from a social event and found Agu and Nneka sitting together in the living room, engrossed in a conversation. The sight of them laughing together sent a wave of jealousy through her, but she quickly brushed it aside. "I'm home," Onyechi announced, expecting Agu to come to her side as he usually did. But he barely looked up. "Welcome back," he said casually, before returning to his conversation with Nneka. Onyechi's irritation grew, but she decided not to make a scene. Instead, she went to the bedroom and began to think about how things had changed in their marriage. She had always been the one in control, the one Agu adored and catered to. But now, it seemed that a mere housemaid was taking her place. The next morning, Onyechi decided to assert her authority. As Nneka was serving breakfast, she called out to her, "Nneka, I need you to clean the guest room today. We'll be having guests over the weekend." "Yes, madam," Nneka replied politely. "And make sure you iron all of Agu's clothes for the week. I don't want to see any single wrinkle," Onyechi added, her tone sharp. Nneka nodded and continued with her tasks. But Onyechi wasn't satisfied. She had noticed the way Agu had been treating Nneka, and she was determined to put the girl in her place. "Nneka," Onyechi called out again, "when you're done, I want you to polish all the silverware. It's looking very dull." This time, Nneka hesitated before answering. She looked at Agu, who was busy reading the newspaper at the dining table, but he didn't look up. "Yes, madam," Nneka finally said, though her voice lacked the usual enthusiasm. Agu noticed the tension between the two women, but chose to remain silent. He knew that Onyechi was trying to assert her dominance, but he also knew that Nneka was not the type to openly defy her employer. However, the situation came to a head later that evening. Onyechi had ordered Neka to prepare a special dish for dinner, and when Nneka brought it to the table, Onyechi took a single bite and immediately spat it out. "What is this?" Onyechi exclaimed, her voice twisted with disgust. "This is terrible. How dare you serve me such filth?" Nneka's eyes welled up with tears. "I'm sorry, madam. I followed the recipe exactly as you instructed." "Well, you clearly did something wrong," Onyechi snapped. "Get out of my sight." As Nneka turned to leave, Onyechi added, "And pack your things. You're leaving this place first thing tomorrow morning. I've had enough of your incompetence." Nneka was stunned. She had done everything she could to please Onyechi, but it seemed that nothing she ever did was good enough. Agu, who had remained silent throughout dinner, could no longer hold back his anger. As soon as Nneka left the room, he turned to Onyechi. "What is wrong with you?" Agu demanded, his voice cold and controlled. "Why are you treating Nneka this way?" Onyechi was taken aback by the intensity of his tone. "She's just a housemaid, Agu. She's here to serve us, and she can't even do that right." "Well, she's doing the best she can, Onyechi, and she's been nothing but respectful to you. You have no right to treat her like this," Agu retorted. Onyechi looked at him, her anger bubbling over. "Why are you defending her? She's just a village girl, and she's nothing compared to me." Agu's expression darkened. "That village girl has more kindness and humility in her little finger than you've shown in your entire marriage with me." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. Onyechi stared at her husband, realizing that he had crossed a line that they would never come back from. "So, you love her, right?" Onyechi asked, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. Agu didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. Onyechi felt her heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. "You want to replace me with her, Agu, don't you?" Onyechi accused, tears welling up in her eyes. Agu looked at her, his expression softening slightly. "I don't want to replace you, Onyechi. But you've changed. You've become someone I don't even recognize anymore." Onyechi couldn't hold back her tears any longer. She had always been proud of her beauty and sophistication, but she had never imagined that those very qualities would drive a wedge between her and her husband. Agu stood up to leave, leaving Onyechi alone with her thoughts. She realized that she had been so focused on maintaining her image and lifestyle that she had neglected the one thing that truly mattered: her marriage. Meanwhile, Nneka sat in her room, packing her belongings with a heavy heart. She had grown to care for Agu deeply, but she knew that her presence was causing trouble in his marriage. She had no intention of coming between them, but it seemed that the damage had already been done. As she finished packing, there was a knock on the door, and it was Agu. "Nneka, please don't go," Agu said, his voice soft and filled with desperation. Nneka looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "But Madam told me to leave." "I don't care what she said. You are staying," Agu insisted. Nneka hesitated. "But sir, I don't want to cause any trouble between you and Madam." "You're not causing any trouble, Neka. This is between Onyechi and me. Please, just stay," Agu pleaded. Nneka finally nodded, and Agu felt a sense of relief wash over him. He couldn't bear to see her leave at all. As the days passed, the tension in the household grew unbearable. Onyechi became more and more distant, while Agu and Nneka grew closer. Onyechi could no longer ignore the obvious bond between her husband and the housemaid. It was clear that Agu had fallen in love with Nneka, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. One evening, as Onyechi sat alone in the living room, she overheard Agu and Nneka talking in the kitchen. Their voices were low, but she could make out bits and pieces of their conversation. "I can't believe this is happening," Nneka said, her voice filled with sadness. "It's not your fault, Nneka. None of this is your fault," Agu replied gently. "But what about Madame? She will never forgive us," Nneka said, her voice trembling. Agu sighed. "I don't know what to do right now, Nneka, but I can't pretend I don't love you." That night, Onyechi made a decision. She packed her bags and left the house without a word to Agu or Nneka. She knew that staying would only prolong the inevitable, and she couldn't bear to see them together any longer. When Agu woke up the next morning, he found a note on the kitchen table. It was from Onyechi. "I'm leaving, Agu. I hope you and Nneka are happy together. I do not have the strength in me to fight with anyone. Goodbye." Agu felt a pang of guilt as he read the notes. But he knew that Onyechi had made the right decision. Their marriage had been over long before Nneka came into the picture. With Onyechi gone, Agu and Nneka were free to be together without any obstacles. Agu officially hired Nneka as the housekeeper, but their relationship quickly evolved into something much more. He continued to teach Nneka how to read and write, and he even enrolled her in evening classes to further her education. Nneka was a quick learner, and she excelled in her studies. As she grew more confident in herself, Agu's love for her deepened. A few months later, he proposed to Nneka. It was a simple and private affair, far from the grand wedding he had had with Onyechi. But Nneka didn't care about the extravagance. She was just happy to be with the man she loved. The village was shocked when they heard that Agu had married his housemaid. But the couple didn't care about the gossip. They were in love, and that was all that mattered. Nneka quickly took over the household, proving to be a good and loving and capable wife. She cooked, cleaned, and took care of Agu with a devotion that he had never experienced before. Agu couldn't believe how lucky he was to have found such a gem. As for Onyechi, she moved back to her parents' house and eventually filed for a divorce. She never remarried, but she found solace in her friends and social circles. She couldn't bring herself to forgive Agu for betraying her, but she knew she had played a role in the downfall of their marriage. Agu and Neka lived happily ever after, raising a family and building a life together. He never forgot Onyechi, but he knew that he had made the right decision. Nneka was the woman he had always needed, and he was grateful every day for the twist of fate that had brought them together.